Did you think Season of Discovery was done until Phase 2? Well, think again. Changes are coming. Have you been playing a caster in Season of Discovery? Have you been watching your DPS meter and hoping that the DPS meter is upside down and you're actually top? Well, you're probably bored, annoyed, and considering re-rolling melee. Just looking at this chart says it all. You look at the DPS order, and all that you see is melee at the top. Why even bother playing a caster, right? We should all just play a melee. Well, maybe not, because that might all be about to change with these new hotfixes. So we're starting off with a balanced Druid, and Star Surge is getting buffed by 182%. Yeah, seriously, 182%. That's an insane damage modifier. These aren't small tweak it and see what happens kind of buffs. This is Blizzard going all in with some seriously impactful changes. So casters, time to get excited. So not only is Star Surge getting that 182% buff, on top of that the cooldown's being reduced. It was 10 seconds, it's going down to just 6. So not only is every Star Surge going to hit like a truck, you're going to be casting a hell of a lot more of them. And finally, much less exciting, the mana cost is being reduced for Star Surge from 3% base mana down to just 1%. Presumably this is to account for the fact that due to the reduced cooldown you'll be casting a lot more of them, hence using more mana. So it is a nice change, but let's be honest, we're all focused on that huge damage buff and CD reduction. Next up, Hunters. Their changes revolve around Flanking Strike, a melee strike where the hunter and their pet attack simultaneously. So first of all, it will now gain the benefit of weapon enhancements like Sharpening Stones, which is a nice change and probably something that's been bugged rather than intentional, and continuing in this vein, you need to have a weapon equipped to use it, as well as the ability being prevented by Pacify. Again, likely both of these are just bug fixes for unintended interactions with the ability. The interesting thing here though, is that the ability will now be treated properly as a melee attack, so it's able to benefit from attack power. So this whole time, the ability hasn't been scaling properly, and melee hunters are already doing pretty well. So that's a decent little buff there. Most of it's just quality of life changes and bug fixes, which isn't too surprising, because they're actually doing some pretty significant damage already. Shortly after these patch notes went out, Blizzard released another couple of hunter changes, with some pretty significant changes for the hunter pets. Kicking it off, we see that hunter pet attack values have been updated to better scale with hunter attack power. Blizzard note that the reason for this change is that pets that cast spells were scaling better than pets that focus on physical damage, so this change should help level the playing field. Also, Scorpid Poison now distributes the additional damage it gains from attack power evenly over each stack of Scorpid Poison on the target. So essentially, it's now going to need to ramp up before it starts doing its max damage. Particularly, this change is focused on how strong the ability was in PvP, and just toning that down a bit. As well as that, pets now receive a smaller portion of Hunter's armor and stamina, a clear signal from Blizzard that they're reining in how good Hunter pets are as tanks. If you've played with one, you've probably seen that most of the time it seems like they don't even take damage. Why even bring an actual player tank, right? But after these changes, they should be toned down but still have some usefulness as a tank. And finally, Aspect of the Lion has been redesigned and will now function as an aura. Aspect of the Lion is essentially Blessing of Kings, but from a hunter. So Blizzard note that this change will allow hunters to use this buff, as well as a personal aspect. The aim of this is to offset the nerfs to caster pets a little bit. Next up, and I'm so glad to see these changes, Shadow Priest has some buffs. Yes, seriously, Shadow Priest might not be garbage anymore. So the rune ability Homunculize had its damage increased by 100%. This ability is awesome. You create 3 tiny little angry copies of yourself, and they just run around and just smack things. But they put some really strong debuffs on the target. They reduce the attack speed, attack power, and armor of the targets that they hit. They currently do some fairly underwhelming damage, but with this buff, that damage should feel more impactful. And considering how cool and fun this ability is, I'm seriously happy to see this change. Then Void Plague, the new dot ability for Priest in Season of Discovery, is being buffed by 200%. That is a serious number. That dot's going to be like a ticking time bomb and put out some serious damage. And finally, Twisted Faith now increases Mind Flay and Mind Blast damage by 50% when used on targets afflicted with Shadow or Pain. Previously this was just 20%. Considering a large portion of your damage as a Shadow Priest is going to come from Mind Flay, this is a sizable buff. Hopefully the combination of all of these changes will be enough to see Shadow Priest come into play more often, and see some kind of viability within Phase 1, instead of just being absolutely rock bottom. On to a couple of rogue changes. Let's face it, rogues haven't been doing too badly this season. So they've just got a couple of bug fixes really. Saber Slash, Shiv, and Main Gauche will now properly consume Remorseless Attacks. Remorseless Attacks is a buff that you gain when killing an enemy that yields XP or honor. It gives your next Sinister Strike, Backstab, Ambush, or Ghostly Strike 40% more crit chance. So a definite buff here, but kind of indirectly as it's just something working as intended rather than being bugged. Then Saber Slash has had its tooltip fixed, as this was showing reduced damage apparently, and more significantly, Saber Slash is now properly considered as a bleed, so therefore it can benefit from the Mangle debuff from Feral Druids, which increases bleeding damage the target takes by 30%. Considering Rogue was already smashing the DPS meters, safe to say they're going to carry on being pretty strong. Right, so onto the Shaman then, and they've got some really nice changes. Lava Lash has had its damage increased from 100% weapon damage up to 150%, and its mana cost has been reduced from 4% base mana down to 1% base mana. Then, in my opinion, the coolest of these changes, Overload. It now has a 50% chance to trigger, up from 33%. Overload gives your Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Chain Heal, Healing Wave, and Lava Burst spells a chance to cast a second spell on the target, at no additional cost. This effect is just iconic Shaman. It's so much fun, feels satisfying, and having this proc more often is just amazing. Absolutely love this change. And finally, Dual Wield Specialization. Now gives 10% hit chance up from 5%. Capping out your hit chance is so important for any melee DPS, so honestly, this is a huge buff. There's even a change to the Boon of Blackfathom world buff, which you can get by being in Thunderbluff or Darnassus when someone turns in the item from Akamai, the last boss in the BFD raid. All of the melee, range, movement speed, attack power stuff, that's staying the same, but a spell portion of the buff they're changing. The 2% crit for spells is going to change to 3% hit, throwing in 25 spell power too. So this is an awesome change. Casters have been really struggling without proper spell power scaling and not having enough hit chance. So this is a massive difference. So this could be absolutely massive in trying to level the playing field between casters and melee. Blizzard have also announced that elemental resistances have been lowered in the BFD raid, for levels more appropriate for level 25. A bunch of bosses have had their elemental resistances reduced. Again, this is focused on allowing casters to not feel so far behind melee DPS. Less resistances, more damage. These resistance nerfs, the change to the world buff, and some of the targeted class changes should end up making caster specs feel so much better to play, hopefully a lot closer to the melee, maybe even above them. This could be amazing for increasing diversity in our options of what to play moving forward, so I'm super excited about seeing how these changes play out. But what do you guys think? Should they have made this many changes so early, or wait until Phase 2? Let me know in the comments. Notably absent from these hotfixes though, Mages and Warlocks. How do you guys feel about this? Why have you not received any love? Do you think you're in a good enough spot already to justify missing out? Let me know. So that's it for this bite-sized rundown. If you like the video guys, please like and subscribe. I'm making videos when I can alongside my full-time job, so your support would honestly mean so much and help me out a lot. I'd love to chat with you guys in the comments section. Hope you're all having loads of fun in Season of Discovery, and that you're as excited about these changes as I am. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.